Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to the 51st episode. I was almost going to get tongue twisted with that one. 51st episode of The Divine Mess. If this is the first time that you are joining us, my name is Tina Marie, and I am one of many things. Love coach, lifestylist, mother of 4, mother of 2 fairy children, and best mate to the bloke that accompanies me on this podcast, who is a truth teller and an amazing human. Very good man to know. So I'd love to introduce Curdy David Perriman, who is the CEO of the Heroes Mystic and is my all-round bestie, and such good fun to do this podcast with. So good morning. How you going?
Good morning to you as well. I'm doing well. It's good to see you because we are doing back-to-back days now of recording, and
I
we have,
know, isn't it
and it's
exciting?
all, and it's exciting. So for listeners, normally we release like every week, but
Yeah.
for our recording, it's just like a divine mess. Sometimes it just feel like that. We don't know
Yep.
when the universe is calling us or just scheduling, and we have been meeting amazing people
Haven't
and
we just? So
and
lucky.
we had on the last episode we had Christine
Mm.
Davies, who was an amazing. We have seen her, I think, for the third time, which was
I
a
know,
which
we
was
have.
so amazing because we had like 3 different conversation.
But just what an impactful human, like in terms of all the things that she has been through and the way that she shows up to serve is it's just fascinating. And it's a subject that most people don't like talking about. And obviously we're talking about death. So, and the death of not necessarily always the death of a person, but death of a role that you've been in, or death of a relationship, or where you're living, like your change of circumstance. All of it can be looked at as a death of some description. But she spoke a lot about the grief that is associated with the changes of seasons in one's life, like
Yeah,
retirement. And, she obviously works in a level 1 trauma center. So she's having to deal with that, you know, hard moments in people's lives. And can you imagine what that's like for one person every single day? What strength and power that requires to be able to hold space for people. But just an amazing, amazing woman. Oh,
yeah,
such a buzz to come off the other side of conversations like that, don't you think?
yeah. Because what's amazing as well, like just a reminder for listeners, like to go back to episode 50 and just listen. And Christine, who is like, she described herself as a really dynamic speaker, writer, educator, spiritual practitioner. She has a long list of labels. We would call that labels, like ordained Presbyterian minister, educator, spiritual director. And she told
That's
us
the one I
before,
liked, right?
and she told us beforehand, like, please don't go through the list. You choose what resonate with you. And what's amazing is like she still have time for her kids, for her husband. She still participate in triathlon. She's a beekeeper, and she does love her coffee and chocolate. Like she mentioned a lot. But
Mm,
like this time, what I found really fascinating is like how she spoke about grief in terms even as kids. Like even as a kid, like you go through that grief. Like loss of a friendship maybe, or like you're changing your body, like maybe it's changing, like you're going through that. This can be considered loss as well. And the way she said, like, to go back in time and just look, where did you feel that grief? Because sometimes even like a loss of the job, you don't know. And like you were mentioning about the trauma, because it's amazing like how she she feels, she emits that vibe
mm,
of positivity and being very calm, being very poised. And yet she worked like in a high level, of trauma where it's constantly death that's surrounded. She's like literally surrounded by death. And
Mm.
yet she's very calm about it. And she took in it in a really compassionate and loving way and
Yeah, I think it was just her point of view, right?
help people to accept it, especially the family and transition, which is amazing, like how she described this experience of transitioning and being so accepting of it, like, and I was like, wow, that's just wow.
Mm. Mm. Exactly.
And
But
how about you, like which part you felt like, oh, I'm taking that bit back with me?
I think just her 3-step process was the bit that was positive for me, like in terms of her self-care rituals, and that, for her, a Friday night in the bath with a soggy magazine and a glass of wine, and just carving out some time for herself. And then if she found that those things weren't working for her, then she, you know, would go and go to her prayer circle or go to friends or other people to find a way in which to fill up her cup. And she said, and if not, she said, I go to my team. And, they're the people, the chiropractor, the therapist, her own spiritual director, the people that she relies on to gain a fresh perspective on her life. I think that for me was like, they're practical things, like they're simple, easy to implement steps that make life so much easier, and being able to handle the stuff that you need to handle.
I feel like this part of having that team, like she called it her team of like therapists, like professionals. And
Mm.
this resonate with what we talked earlier with one of our guests, Brianna, the
Mm-hmm.
sound healer, sorry, who came and said like, if you want to change something in your life, you have to look within, yes, and then look on the outside, especially starting with whom you're surrounded. And Christine has this team that's taking care of her technically, which is amazing. Like she already like have her therapist, like like even her spiritual director, and I feel like every area of her life, she has a professional taking care of it. So
Yeah.
it's like you're sitting back, like we always say, like surrender and let go, and you have the universe taking care. I felt that when she was telling about her team,
Mm. Mm.
like for us, I was reflecting on that and I was like, that's how normally our angels or archangels or however you want to call that spirit guide works as well. Because like we mentioned with one of our guests, we had a quick conversation with, um, and he was mentioning about Hinduism, and I was
Mm.
saying like how many gods, millions of gods we have, and each one has specific, like a specific job, if you want.
Yeah.
And that's how it is in our life. Like sometimes it's like giving that, if we can't at the moment, like afford like a professional coach or therapist or someone, but you can still go to those spirit, like, and just ask for
Mm.
example, if you want to call them angels of abundance, or an angel taking care of your job situation or taking care of your relationships situation, and you can just feel that they are more professional and like they
Yeah.
operate on the divine realm,
Yes.
and it will be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's how I viewed when Christine was sharing about her team of professional in the physical realm.
Yes.
And and that's how I resonated that with that bit for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose, like you were saying, if people don't have the funds or the capacity to obviously get or seek professional help, then there are a lot of online, dial-in places like, well, in Australia, they have a group called Lifeline where you can call in and you can speak to counsellors and therapists for free. So there are services. You've just got to Dr. Google it really, and to find somebody that can, or whether it's a local group that you can go and sit and be in circle with others who share a similar challenge or, a point of view, then go and seek some help. Like if you find that if you can't make the change yourself, and if going to a place outside of yourself, whether it be walking in nature or going to a friend's house for a cup of coffee or doing something outside of yourself, if those things are still not helping you to provide the change that you're looking for, then to go and seek additional help. And there are avenues in which you can do that. But she was sort of, I think, removing the stigma and the shame of putting your hand up and saying, hey, I can't quite manage this all on my own and I need some help. So, like she said, she's got someone that helps her with her triathlon training and someone that helps keep her body in shape. So she goes and sees a chiropractor, and she's got someone that helps her with her spiritual load. So she's got her own spiritual director. She said, how can I spiritually direct other people if I'm not doing this? I'm not practicing what I preach, essentially. So I just found her overall just a really positive, fabulous woman to be around. And there was so much that you could take out of the episode that you can practically apply, even if it only starts with doing stuff for yourself. Like we were talking about, obviously, being parents and trying to find that moment in time for yourself and to ritualize the things that we normally do in our day, that we do in a rush or a hurry, or, making that cup of coffee, or standing at the bench eating our breakfast, or taking a shower, or just the things that we have to simply do, that she said she puts ritual into it. She said that cup of coffee that she sits on the front porch and drinks while taking in everything that surrounds her, versus standing at the kitchen bench, leaning one hip, yelling at her kids to get ready for school, and trying to shove some breakfast down her throat at the same time. She said they're two radically different things, and they provide a radically different end game for when you're getting ready in the morning. It just makes such a massive difference that if you can wake up 10 or 15 minutes earlier and just enjoy that moment of time, it's enough to sustain you for the day, no matter what life throws at you. I don't know about you, but I like to do that with my dogs in the morning, go for a walk, get a coffee, and just be outside in nature. Like that makes me feel happy, but other people can do it. And so you can do it in so many different ways. I know that you like to do it differently, but what's it for you? That element of self-care.
At the moment, I don't have a dog here in New Zealand, but obviously, if I had, that would be the morning ritual. Like, there will be no other way, no better way to start the day, even if it's like freezing cold now, but that's okay because still we can go out and just enjoy the sunrise or something. Um, Also, like, because I like her, the way she described, like you said, like having a coffee and then, like if you're yelling at the kid at the same time, it's like multitasking. And it resonated with me in terms of like a few episode I mentioned about Dandapani saying like, if you are like, walking the dog, you're walking the dog. It's not like spending just time with you. because you're with the dog. Like the dog is like, I still have this image of the dog is like thinking just about that walk with you, whereas you as human, you're thinking about the car or traveling or whatever is going on in your mind, yet the dog is like focusing on. And that's whereas if you're just having the coffee and enjoying that, being in the moment and being with
Mm-hmm.
you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how she described it, and I feel it resonate
Mm.
with what Tantabani as well was saying, that when you choose that moment to be in silence and just be with you, that's
Mm-hmm.
when the answers come to you. That's when
1000%.
you surrender, you let go
That's
of.
our favorite word. I should get a hat, I think, with it
Let's surrender.
plastered across
I
the
think
top and go,
we are going to create like a t-shirt like
mm-hmm.
divine mess, like about surrender or divine surrender.
Surrender, and then surrender a little bit more and a
Yeah,
little bit more and a little bit more. You
I
can see it
feel
like that iceberg kind of situation.
because we are reaching like the 1 year anniversary officially with the divine mess, and I feel like surrender has been the major word, like in
Yeah,
nearly every single episode we have heard about, even
in some
like,
way, shape, or form, right?
yes, like even Christine when she was saying like having that coffee, same situation, like if you're like just, you know, um, having the coffee, yelling at the kids, even at the husband, if or your partner, or whatever it is, and getting quick, like to get out, but you're not enjoying the moment and you're not surrendering to the flow of the universe. And that's how we struggle. It feels like if you're watching that river, it feels like we are the one that's putting all the rocks in the way of the flow of the water. And we are trying to go upstream. I think Abraham Hicks will explain that we're always trying to go upstream, where the universe is like saying just flow and go downstream.
Yeah,
And yet we are fighting that stream constantly with our thoughts, even if with, like how many messages we can receive,
yeah,
yet we still do like all the way through.
yeah.
We fight that messages.
Yeah, or we fight what, because listening to Lewis Howes, the School of Greatness or the Book of Greatness that he's written, and he's talking about you've got to follow what that intersection, the ikigai, right? Of what you're good at and what your skills mean that can help provide for you, and bring it all together, and just then when you follow what that bliss is to an
Mm.
extent, except then that's when things start to flow, because if you're constantly fighting it and going, oh, that'll never make money, or that'll, the internal chatter. But if you follow what you're good at, the universe is going to provide what you need when you need it. I've
Yeah.
kind of found that yesterday in going, this is stuff that's for me is easy, but for someone else, it can be almost a traumatic experience.
It's
And
hell.
it's like, it quite simply is like it hurts their brain. Like it's an overwhelmed situation for them. But I go in and go, oh, well, it seems logical and simple to me. Yet what they do, like going, that does not feel logical or simple for me at all. So it's kind of like we're trading skill sets at the moment and going, well, I can do that if you can do that for me. And then it was just like, oh, oh, okay. Instead of going, oh, but someone else already does that. And I don't want to feel like I'm stepping on someone else's toes, or it's just finding that flow. And that's the one thing, like Christine said, like from a kid she was fascinated with death and loss and all of, and she could have endeavored to go in another direction because other people found it uncomfortable, but she found a way through thinking it was going to be medicine and, being an EMT and thinking she was going to be a doctor. And then, an illness of her own showed her that people don't handle that bedside manner really well. And she was kind of going, I could do that better. I know I can do that better. And then a conversation with her own priest. And then it was just this kind of snowball effect for her in getting her to where she is now. And you see the smile on her face, like she's radiant in talking about stuff that most people would go, pull the covers up over your head, you don't want to look at it, you don't want to think about it. So, it would be nice to think that there are people like that in all hospitals, that there are, I suppose we could look at them like earth angels that are here to help with that transition and the loss and the grief that comes from not only death, but, a change in relationship status, or your children getting married and then you're not the next of kin anymore. It's all of those things. It's when you lose a relationship or your kids grow up and you're kind of not needed as much, and then the relationship changes, but you still miss that, them coming in and snuggling and going, oh, Mum, I don't really know what to do. And you go, oh, I'm needed, and that's great. But you have to find the joy in the change, or
Yeah, and
otherwise you're mourning for stuff all the time that just isn't there anymore.
yeah, and I feel like with every guest we have that reminder from the universe. And I know for you, like you had like this gentle aha moment. That was the end of the episode. Like you had this aha moment about what happened in your life, and
1,000%.
you were like, yeah, that's it. I got it now. And
Yeah.
that's what I found amazing, that this year when we decided, well, at the end of the last year as well, to open the virtual couch, is to have people on board, and every single guest has reminded us of something that we have
Yeah.
learned through our spiritual journey, maybe have forgotten along the way. But then the universe is like, this is what you need to know today, and this is what you need to be reminded of, how you're serving
Of.
the world.
Yeah.
And which is amazing. Like I feel that with every single person that we are meeting, and it's like every conversation we still go that, oh, that's something we can learn, that's something we can apply, this
Mm.
is what's happening in my life. Oh, I got it now.
Yeah.
Like sometimes
It's
we'll
the
talk about
revelation,
something.
right? Isn't it?
Yeah. We will be talking about it before they come on the Zoom. And then you got the answer like during the conversation. They don't know the
Mm-hmm.
situation. They don't know what's happening. And
No.
it just happened
No.
like naturally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It was just understanding what loss can feel like for other people, and then it doesn't necessarily get attached to death, but it can be.
I feel like also like, like that ego death as well, because prior to that recording, I had a like peer coaching team meeting like that we had, and one of the coaches was mentioning that they were doing a course where they were required to sit down with their inner voices, I would say, because it was labeled as the judge and the avoider. So, and you have to observe what the judge is saying and what the avoider is saying. And she was saying like how uncomfortable it was. And she didn't want to, she was so angry at the trainer, I think, like at the person who created that program. And she was like, I don't want to go there. And I feel that's the grief of losing who you are currently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a form of grief as well. And she said like how uncomfortable it is. And I was like telling her, yeah, it really sucked to be in between the judge on one hand and the avoider on the other. It sucked. that's where your freedom is. Because once you
Yeah.
embrace those voices and you accept and lovingly like you accept it, even how hard it is, it's like for me, in terms of Christine's, like information that she shared with us,
Mm.
it's like that death of that ego is like it's a grief of losing who you know you are currently, but you're
Yeah.
moving towards that new person that you want to be, that deep within you already are. Yeah.
Mm.
And that's what we were discussing. And I find that interesting that Christine was mentioning about grief in it's not only about that death that we know transitioning, people transitioning to the other side, but
Yeah.
it's also for me from what I got out of this conversation was like it's also your ego, it's also any point in your life when you're changing job, when your relationship has broken down, like even as a kid when you're transitioning like to be a teen, like
Mm-hmm.
and teen to teen adult, I think it's called adult teen or something it's called now, and adult, you know and and transitioning through all those phases, even like
Yeah.
relationship with your parent changing, all those can be seen or considered as grief moment because you're
Yep.
losing that part of who you used to be and becoming that new person.
Yep. And I suppose same for women too. Like, when
Mm,
you go from being a child to blossoming into a young woman, and then going from a young woman and then moving into a relationship and becoming a mother, and then getting to that point in your life where you can no longer bear children. Like, there's grief associated at every single section, but it's not very often that we discuss that grief or that loss of going, I'm never going to have any more children, or I'm never ever just going to be me. Like, you are, but in a different way. So you have to give yourself space and time to grieve the loss and the change, but whilst still being happy and excited about the newness that's coming with the next step in the adventure, right? And that's the dichotomy and the balance. That's the dark and the light and the divinity of the mess, is that with good there has to come not necessarily bad, but just difference. And it's understanding that the difference isn't bad, it's just different, it's just unknown. You don't, it's like learning to do something new. You're going to suck at it for a long time until you get good at it, right? Like when our kids learn to walk, or they learn to ride a bike, or you learn any new skill, you're going to suck at it. And it's your choice whether you drop it or whether you're persistent and you keep going with it. You never want to grieve regret. Like, you never want to be in that space where you go, could have done that, should have done that, But like Brianna said, we're whacking shame in the middle of all of that as well at the same time. Like, why would you do that to yourself? Just one more step, one more try, give it another go. Eventually you're going to be awesome at it, but today you're going to suck at it, and just be okay with that.
and also like she was reminding moms that you're actually doing a good job even if you feel
Yeah.
like you don't. That
And a
was really
shit
powerful.
job. Yeah.
That was, I feel like, a really powerful reminder for all moms out there because
And dads
it's,
too.
yeah, and every parent, every single
Mm.
parent, like they feel like that guilt or blame themselves that if something happened to their kid, like it's their fault. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that blame is automatically go to them, like they blame
Yeah.
themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that was a really gentle yet powerful reminder to all
Gentle kick in
parents.
the ass, right?
Yes, to that you're actually doing a great job, better. than you think you are, because there's no like, you don't need a CV for that or a resume for that, you
No.
know. Like one person said, like they don't come with a manual, you know, like you don't know what's coming. There was a
But
guy who was
they also
joking.
have their own journey, right? And
Hmm.
whilst you think you're screwing it up royally, it's essential for their ascension to learn through the screw ups and the mistakes. But so long as they don't avoid making the mistakes in the first place, because otherwise they're never going to learn.
And I think like to surrender to that, to that understanding that it's not your, you know, like your full-time job to take, to like protect them all the time, and to remind yourself that it's really hard for a parent, like because it's part of you. And when some people, you know, they reach that spiritual perspective that they are really detached from everything,
Mm.
then we, when we are still in that 3D world, we say, oh, they are like really arrogant, you know, like they are really just thinking selfish, they just think about themselves. But really, because they have given everything to the divine, so they
Yeah.
trust it so much, so they see everything as the divine. But
Mm.
when we are in our 3D mind, we still like feel attached, you know, like maybe to the car, to the house, to the bank balance. And yet
Mm.
there was someone who mentioned, like when you are, you know, like you're dying, like you're not going to say, oh, what's left in my bank account,
Mm.
you know, like you're not going to regret that, you
No.
know. And I find that really amazing, like to hear, to remind parents, you know, that it's not your full-time job to protect, and even how hard it is to understand, and maybe it will take you a whole lifetime to understand that or not.
Yeah. But you've got
But you,
to, I think you've got to apply the learning to walk scenario
mm,
on everything. You know, did you turn around and tell your kids to quit when they wobbled on their feet for the first time? Or did you tell them to quit when their crawling looked nothing like it did in the books? You know, and if you continuously swoop in to fix it, that's what you're telling them,
mm,
that they don't have the capacity to stand on their own 2 feet and fix it for themselves. You know, they've got to, we all need to learn from the mistakes that we make to ensure that we get better at what we do. You know, but if we continuously wrap them up and don't allow them to experience loss and grief in all its shapes and forms and sizes, we're not doing them a service. We're doing them a disservice by doing that. And ourselves as well, because we're carrying more load than we need to. We
I
don't have
think
to
that,
carry that load.
I think like even because I know sometimes in the Christian faith, I heard that a lot, that God sees us as his children,
Mm-hmm.
and we throw tantrum as children as well all the time. And now that you're mentioning that, I get this feeling that this is what God or spirit is taking us through, you know, like our journey. If you compare that to our own spiritual journey, you know, like when you're not seeing the result, you know, like you're not seeing what you want to manifest, anything, like even the slightest, maybe that coffee that you requested for, you know, like 2 weeks ago, yet it's not coming. You can't say it. It's simple as, or, and then we throw that tantrum, you know. But
Mm.
God has that faith in us that we still have that capacity to manifest the coffee, as simple as it is, to manifest $1 million or 2 million, whatever the number is itchy for you. You
Mm.
know, like I remember, sorry, there was one lady who said like to write down the number that's itchy for you, and to wonder, like to dive in why it is, you know, to constantly do that number and wonder why it is. And yet it's, you have that capacity to manifest that amount of money or
Mm.
the relationship that you want. because I see a lot on social media that manifesting a relationship is becoming more and more prominent now. Like people are looking for that. They call it the SP. I don't know. Like, is it like a specific person? I don't know. I think it's a specific person. For me, it's like,
I don't
oh, the
know.
spiritual person. But they talk about like the SP. So I'm assuming that it's a specific person that you're
Yeah,
talking about. But I see a lot of the spiritual community that they talk about manifesting the SP, like that specific person that you want as in a relationship. And I feel like people are moving more towards that connection now with one another. But I
yeah,
feel like we tend to forget that specific person that you're looking for is like sometimes in the mirror, and you forget about mentioning that. And people don't talk about that a lot.
yeah.
Your
Well, you
connection
be
with,
the person you want to attract, right?
yeah,
Be 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 all the qualities that you want to attract. You know, if you want somebody who's courageous and funny and honest, where can you be more courageous and funny and honest? You know, if you want somebody that's reliable, how can you be more reliable? You know, like you can't ask to manifest those things in somebody if you cannot do it for yourself. And like you say, you may have to have a good check in with the ego and let stuff go, surrender it, and go, it's not serving me anymore. Like you can't attract things into your life if you're hanging on to all the old stuff because you don't want to feel the loss, you don't want to feel the grief of it, you don't want to sit there and hang on to it and go, why do I feel so attached to this or to this identity or to whatever it happens to be. I think that was the biggest thing for me taking out from her is that it's okay to feel the loss. It's okay to feel the grief, but feel it, recognize it, see where it shows up in your body, and then do something about it. Do something to transmute it, change it, and then go, oh, okay, it's fine. I didn't need it anymore. Yeah, it served its purpose. But we move it on to the universe or to someone else so it can serve a purpose for them.
it's again like surrender and let go of what's no longer serving you. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's a great affirmation, I feel like. Thank you, universe, for, like letting go, helping me, guiding me to let go of what's no longer serving me, or whoever it is to no longer
Yeah.
serving me. And I feel that once you get on that spiritual, like journey, automatically people go away. And I was just before the recording, I was watching one guy who was saying he had a spiritual awakening last year, and he started telling his family members about it.
Mm. Mm.
The first person he told his wife, and his wife say, "Okay, I'm going to make dinner and just have some rest. You will be fine." That was his first encounter when he shared about his spiritual awakening, because he was listening to Dolores Cannon, that we mentioned a lot on this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and we consider she's our cosmic grandma. And she was talking about, and that guy like saw a light from the TV coming onto him, and he felt like for the first time in his life, his eyes opened,
Mm.
and he like saw life in a different light.
Yeah.
And and then he told his wife, and his wife had this reaction, okay, yeah, it was Sunday night, so I'm going to cook dinner and just have some rice, you will be fine. And then he started, and then his wife got the awakening later that week, and she was like, oh, I got you now, I understand why. Now my eyes are open. And he said like, oh, now I know I'm not crazy. Like I thought like I was crazy. And then he started telling that to his family members. And his family members remove him from the inheritance. They said he doesn't deserve the name of his mom or his dad, and he was removed. So he lost his job because of that. He lost because he couldn't handle, he didn't know how to handle that spiritual awakening experience. So he lost his job, he lost his inheritance. He said he didn't care about the inheritance anyway. He lost his house as well. All his, even he sold like his TV, his personal belongings. He lost everything. And then he moved to a place he called the Slice of Heaven now, which is a smaller place, but he was so happy with his wife. And he says on this spiritual journey, because he went into a really dark place about after that. And that's what
Mhm.
happened when you were talking about the balance. Like sometimes it's like we see that light and then our ego comes into place and say, no, 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 don't go there. It's too bright for you. Let's go back to what we know, right? And that's how it is. That's the voice telling you, oh, that's too bright. That's not for you. You don't deserve this. You're not worthy of this. And he went into that dark place and he was depressed. And then things started to shift when he started to meet with his soul family, like he said. People he resonate with is like, oh yeah, you are my person. It's not like that specific SP. I don't know, SP. It is. It's just like you are my soul family. Like you're part of my soul family. And that's what he talked about, like how he shifted. He said, like, sometimes you go into that really dark space where you don't understand what's happening to you and you don't understand, oh, maybe it's too bright for me. I can't handle that. I'm not used to that. And then he said now he's really open. He said his family members told him, don't put that on social media, don't share it with the world because you will be seen as crazy. And said, you know what? I'm still going to do it because you already removed me from my inheritance anyway. So who cares? Like, I'm going to do it. And I find it fascinating as light workers, as we do, like the journey that we go. And he said, like, it's a lonely journey at times when you don't have your soul family,
Yeah.
when you don't know how to explain what's happening to you because there's no logic to what's happening to you. You
No,
can't explain that.
no.
If I'm telling you about the dark, you will be like, oh, you're talking like you switch off the light. And I'm like, no. It's definitely not that.
Mm-mm.
It's not like even if you go to the darkest place in Earth where there's absolutely no light, it's still not that feeling. Until you go through that and you choose that path and you decide, yeah, this is what I want to do and want to go. Well, the universe will take you anyway. But if you're ready for the ride, you will say,
Get on
bring it
board,
on.
babe.
Yes. But
Attach that bungee cord and jump.
yes,
Yes.
that you're doing anyway. Don't worry. This is happening anyway. This is not like we are negotiating or
Well,
changing it. Don't
it's not
worry.
negotiable,
Yeah,
apparently. It's
yeah.
just we're waiting for right time.
It's
And
it's
I'm
in your soul contract, so you sign up for it. So you don't need the insurance when they tell you to sign it. You say, no, that's fine. I already signed it.
Yeah,
My soul already signed it.
that's good. That was part of the contract when I came here. Well, my good friend, this has been a fabulous chat as always.
Mm.
And we're so glad that everybody could take some time out of their day or listen to us while they're driving in the car and enjoy our general catch up and chit chat. So, as always, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to your company on episode number 52.
Yes.
Still
And
blows my mind.
and
Still blows my mind.
we'll have another amazing guest for the 52nd one. And for
Mm.
those who want to contact Christine, we'll put it in the show note, the
Yeah,
link where you can connect with her. She has a fabulous newsletter every weekish, like she said,
wickish, she said.
that she will send out some amazing tips about how to navigate through your divine mess. And to everyone listening who is still with us after 51 episodes, thank you so much. And we
Thank you,
love
baby.
you, and we share the love with everyone this week. We're looking forward for next week now to
Absolutely.
celebrate our 1 year anniversary officially. And we're really excited about that. So thank
We
you,
are.
everyone.
Look forward to it. Talk soon.